Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I go by Hiram or Bogwa. Hey guys, welcome to another tutorial. So today I'll be covering the for loop statement. One thing that we will be utilizing in this video is the arrays. So if you haven't seen my arrays video or are not familiar with arrays, please go watch that first before watching this. So the program that I'll be creating will be iterating through a country list and printing out each country. And with that, let me go ahead and get started by creating the class. Okay, we have our class, and let's go ahead and compile it to make sure it works. And it looks good. So the first thing I'm going to do is define an array of type string containing the country names. And with that, let me go ahead and define it. And I'll define some countries in here. So with that, I think that list is good enough for our use case. And now I'm going to define the for loop statement. Okay, I've defined my for loop statement. And now let me explain to you how it works. So the for loop statement has three conditions that we must have. So the first condition here is setting our iterator value. So this will be the index value that we will use to iterate through this list of arguments, right? With arrays, we start from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Our starting index must be 0, which is why we do int I equals 0. And then there's a semicolon, and then next we define our Boolean logic condition that will determine if the for loop should continue executing or if it should exit. And that's going to be if I is less than countries dot length. Remember, the dot length property is a property of arrays, and that's going to return 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's going to return 6. Now, the interesting thing to note here is that it returns 6, it doesn't return 5. We do I is less than countries dot length. As long as I is less than that, we can continue executing this for loop. Because if I hit 6, that's when we want to exit. We don't want to run this code because that would be an exception if we were to try and access the 6th element, since the last element in this array will be the 5th element, since we're going to start from 0. Then the other statement in the for loop is our incrementer. And remember, we had the pre-increment and post-increment. Same thing with the pre-decrement and post-decrement, right? Here, we're defining a post-increment. So what we're saying is like execute this for loop utilizing whatever I is currently, which is going to be 0. And then once it finishes executing once, we're going to increment that. So the first time it runs, it's going to utilize 0. And then the second time it runs, it's going to utilize 1. Now, the interesting thing to know is in the for loop, this initialization runs once. So whenever that for loop statement starts executing, next, after that, the for loop will only check for this Boolean logic condition, and then the incrementer or decrementer, depending on however you've written your logic. So with that, I'll go ahead and print out the list of countries. Now, as you can see, I'm using the countries array and I'm passing the index. that I'm accessing right now. And then after that, since it's a string, I can call the toUpperCase method, converting the country name to uppercase. So with that, let's go ahead and execute this and see for ourselves. And there it is. The list of countries were printed out. Now I want to do something else, which is print this country names backwards, right? So let me just write a statement here. So the next thing that I'm going to do is create another for loop that prints the country list backwards. And I would like for you to pause the video and think about how you would write this for loop statement in order to print those countries backwards. Okay, so here what I'm saying is we're gonna start with our index initialized at countries.length -1. So that's gonna be the last element in the array. And then I'm gonna execute this statement as long as that index value is greater than 0. And that should be as long as it's greater than or equal to 0, because 0 is the last element. And then the next thing, my increment or decrement operation will be, in this instance, we're going to be decrementing, since we're going to be going down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all the way down to 0. So let's go ahead and execute this and see. And there you go. We have our list, which was printed backwards. It's important for you to practice the for loop statements and understand how they work. So I would encourage you to go ahead and write some program on your own and experiment with the statement itself. And with that, see you next time. Thank you for watching my tutorials. Give it a thumbs up if you like it, and subscribe if you haven't. And also check me out on Instagram at coderush.io.